How's it going, everybody? David Hedge here, House Hedge Gaming, and today we're going to be taking a look at the newest starters from Alpha Clash TCG's expansion, Genesis Returns. Now, they sent me these starters. I've already opened it up, sleeved up the decks, and now we're going to show you how to play this game. We're going to go over the different types of cards, go over a little bit of the gameplay. We'll do a playthrough video later on down the line, but I wanted to show off these decks because there's two decks that feature the Harbingers, War and Pestilence. Now, War is basically a heavy-hitting red deck, while Pestilence is a green deck that controls the toxins and spreads them around to weaken not only your opponent's forces, but powers up your forces as well. So let's take a look at how to play and review these decks for Alpha Clash TCG. Now, before we go into the starters, let's take a look at the card types that are in these decks. First off are the contender cards. Now, this is your main character that you'll be playing throughout the game. Starting from the upper right-hand corner, you have the health, the card name, the contender abilities, the attack and defense, the affiliation, the rarity, and the character / name and planet that they are from. Next up, you have Clash cards. Now, these are your characters that will be helping you along the way to victory. From the upper right-hand corner, you have the resource cost, which also includes the specific resources that you need to play the card. You have the card name, card effects, card types, card affiliations, rarity, attack and defense, and again, the character and the name of the planet that they're from. Now, like most characters in other card games, the attack and defense are exactly that. The attack is how much damage that they can deal, and the defense is how much they can take before they are taken off the field and sent to the oblivion. So be careful when you're expending these cards and attacking with them, because they might not make them back from battle. Up next are action cards, which starts off with Clash buffs. Now, these are used to help buff up your Clash cards and contenders, but also weaken your opponents as well. Again, resource cost in the top right corner. Specific resource cost is right under that. Then you have the card name, the card effect, card type, rarity, and the card subtype in the lower left-hand corner. All this could equal bad news for your opponent, but if they're playing against you, it could also mean bad news for you as well. Now, in addition to the Clash buff actions, you have other actions as well, including quick actions. Now, these can be played either on your turn or your opponent's turn, depending on if the conditions are right. But either way, these can definitely help you in your journey to defeating the other alphas. Next up are trap cards. Now, these cards can be laid face down in the accessory zone, and you are able to use these cards to swing the tide of battle in your favor if the conditions are right. You'll pay the cost of the card, flip it over, and use the trap to take down your opponent. Next up are Clash Grounds. Now, these are the battlefields that you'll be waging war in. Now, with these Clash Grounds, they can either give your characters buffs, your Clash cards, and your contenders, or they can be weakening your opponents, or it could be something entirely different. There's only one way to find out when you play these cards. Next up, we have weapons. Now, these cards are able to be attached to your Clash cards and your contenders, and they will allow you to have permanent buffs on your characters, and hopefully be able to swing in for lethality against the other alphas before they do the same to you. Now, one more thing to mention before we go into the decks is that some of these cards will be referencing the Portal. Now, this was introduced in Clash Grounds, one of the newest expansions, and what this does is that allows you to have cards that will be able to become more powerful if the portal is open. The portal starts off the game closed, but you can pay 2 resources of any color to be able to open the portal and use it to your advantage, but be careful because your opponent can do the same. Alright, now that we've gone over a bit of the gameplay and the different cards that are in the game, let's show you the 2 decks that are new from the Genesis Return set for the Alpha Clash TCG. First off, we have War, Fierce Javelineer. Now, this one is pretty much a go big or go home deck that features the Harbinger faction. Now, with this deck, you're a heavy hitter. Plain and simple. You're going to be buffing up your Clash cards, buffing up your contender, and hitting as hard as you can to break through your opponent's defenses to go to the contender's life total. So first off, we have War, Strife Bringer. It has an enter trigger. You may activate the portal, which the portal is a separate card that has 2 functions. You can either open it by using 2 resources or close it by using 2 resources. But if the portal is open, a lot of things can happen that are not good for your opponent, but also gives your opponent a chance to use the portal to their advantage against you. But in this case, you may activate the portal, then create 2 1/1 Red Harbinger War Minion Clash tokens, and it has a trigger whenever it attacks. If the portal is open, you may engage any number of Clash tokens you control. If you do, until end of turn, this Clash gets breakthrough and +1/+0 for each Clash token you've engaged with this effect. So for engaging, you're basically turning them sideways. A lot of us card players know this action very well. So in this case, you're going to try and use those tokens to buff up the Strifebringer to put their attack over the top of your opponent's defenses. Next up, we have War, the Provocateur. When this card is dealt damage, you may choose one. Deal 1 damage to another target Clash card or activate the portal. Now, this can be very beneficial because you have Clash damage from attacks and you have non-Clash damage from effects like the Provocateur. So Clash damage goes away at the end of a Clash. Non-Clash damage goes away at the end of a turn, so it can build up over time. So this one can definitely get that last little bit of damage through or take out tokens, or it could be a plethora of other things, but you can also activate the portal to open or close it to your benefit. Next up, we have War, Turmoil Tyrant. It's observant, which means this card can attack the turn it enters play. So it's observing the battlefield before it decides what it wants to do. Then it has an enter trigger. Clash tokens you control get +0/+1 until end of turn. So it can buff up their defense to make it a little bit harder for them to go away when they attack your opponent. Now, we did go into Somewhere in San Francisco earlier, and we have already went over Decimate when we were looking at the cards at the beginning of the video. Next, we have War, Battle Tactician. It has an enter trigger. If the portal is open, create 1/1 Red Harbinger War Minion Clash token. This token can't be obstructed or blocked or be the target of Clash buffs this turn. At the end of your turn, send that token to the Oblivion. So you get a very zealous minion to help you out. That's a little bit hard to deal with, but once it's already attacked, it's done its job, it's getting out of there. It's already done its thing. Next, we have Rally Forces. It's a trap card. For each opponent you have, create a 1/1 Red Harbinger War Minion Clash token. It's simple as that. Mainly it's going to be on a one-on-one game, but you know what? In multiplayer games, this can definitely give you a leg up against the competition because it gives you a lot more forces than they can probably deal with. Next up, we have Bardigan Warhorn, which is a relic. It's an exclusive, which means only one copy of this card can be under your control. And with this effect, I can understand it. It has a enter trigger ability, create a 1/1 Red Harbinger minion token. At the end of each turn, if the portal is open, create another token of that type, the 1/1 Red Harbinger War Minion Clash token. So this is basically sound the horn, getting a bunch of people there while the portal is open. So if the portal is closed, you're going to have to reopen it again so you can get this effect. Next, we have Spoils of War. When a Clash token you control defeats a Clash card, you may send this relic to the Oblivion. If you do, target Clash card you control gets +2/+2 until end of turn. So pretty much this is able to help buff your minions later on down the line, buff your Clash cards. Actually, not the minions. The minions are there, but the Clash cards are where you get a lot of the benefit from. This can help a Clash card later on down the line, make it beefier, and make it a heavy hitter. Next, we have War, Rampant Rival. It has a trigger when it attacks. Until end of turn, this card gets +1/+0 for each War Minion Clash token that attacked this turn. The more War Minions you have, the bigger this one gets. Whenever a War Minion Clash token is defeated, this card gets +0/+1 until end of turn, making it a lot harder for them to get taken out. And it has a trigger when it's defeated. You get to create a minion token to get ready for the next time you need minions along the way. Next we have War, Battle Paragon. This card gets Undisputed, which means this Clash card cannot be defeated during a Clash on your turn, as long as you control 3 or more Clash tokens. You're going to be building up a lot of minions. This is going to be a hard one to get taken out. Next, we have a quick action, which is Collateral Damage. It has Counter Attack, which means you play it during the attacks. Deal 3 damage to target attacking Clash card. Then, if the portal is open, you may pay 2 red. If you do, deal 2 damage to another target Clash card. So this is a way to get through your opponent's defenses and their attackers at the same time. Next, we have the card I Am Chaos. If you control a war contender, this card costs 1 less to play. 1 less red to play. So it's regular 3 costs for resources, 2 red. You only need 1 red to do it. Send target Clash token you control the Oblivion, then deal 2 damage to target contender or Clash card. If the portal is open, you create 2 1/1 red war minion Clash tokens. So it produces tokens, but you're going to be sacrificing something to deal some damage to a contender or Clash card. That is definitely chaos. Next, we have the Gravity Javelin. You can attach it for 2 red. Attached contender gets trigger attack. You may unattach this weapon. If you do, choose 2 target Clash cards you don't control. They cannot obstruct during this Clash and must obstruct the next attack you declare this turn if able. So basically, you're trying to goad somebody into blocking you with one heck of a javelin toss. Pretty good. Next, we have the Harbinger of Madness, which I believe we've already covered that one. Let me just double check here, because I don't want to repeat myself here. Let's take a look. We have not covered that one. There's a decent number of wars, which is more than fine. War is definitely living up to its name in this deck. And the one thing I like, there's a lot of games that have like characters that have the exact same name or similar, but with this, you definitely get different versions of the card and the artwork, and I love that. All right, now back to our regularly scheduled war. War, Harbinger of Madness. It's 5, has Breakthrough. When it enters, you may send 1 war minion Clash token to the Oblivion. If you do, search your deck for a red contender weapon and reveal it, shuffle your deck, and put it on top. It has a trigger when it attacks. This card gets +1/+0 for each war minion Clash token that was defeated or sent to the Oblivion this way. All right, so, and we've already gone over the Turmoil Tyrant. We got the foil ones here, and we got just a couple more left. So let's go with War Zone. So for 3, 2 of them have 3 red. It's a counterplay. You may only activate this effect when an opponent plays a Clash Ground. Send that Clash Ground to the Oblivion. It does not enter play. Then send this Clash Ground to the Oblivion. At the end of each player's turn, that player may ready up to 1 Harbinger Clash card they control. And Clash cards get +1/+0 that are Harbinger. So this is a way to get rid of the opponent's Clash Grounds, because you're basically just destroying everything because, well, look who you are. Next, we have the Fire Javelin. You can attach it to a contender for +1/+1. While this weapon is active, attached to your contender, war minion tokens you control get trigger, defeat, deal 1 damage to target Clash card. At the end of your turn, unattach this weapon. This card can only be attached to the war contender. It's a War's Javelin. Of course, it's one of its main weapons, but this buffs up your contender, and this definitely makes your minions a lot more dangerous when they get defeated. But that is all the cards in the War deck. Like I said, this is going to be a heavy-hitting deck, and right off the bat, when you play this, you're definitely going to be attacking. You're going to be doing everything you can to go through your opponent's defenses. Now, this deck could probably be good against any other deck that you could possibly think of in the starter realm for the game. But now let's take a look at Pestilence and see what they have in store for War. All right, now it's time to take a look at Pestilence, Toxic Presence. Also part of the Harbingers, 25 starting health, but this one's going to be weakening your opponent's characters and Clash cards and contenders while you're building yours up through the toxins that you're able to partake upon them. So let's get started with this. First off, we have Infectious Presence. It is a accessory relic. Triggers upon entry, put 3 toxic counters on this card. At the end of your turn, remove 1 toxic counter from this card. Then, if this card has no toxic counters on it, send it to Oblivion. Non-Harbinger Clash cards get -2/-0. So right off the bat, this is going to weaken your opponent's characters because if they're not playing Harbingers, they're definitely getting it wrong in this game. Next, we have Pestilence, the Repulsive. Triggers when it enters, discard 1 card. Now you might be thinking that's a steep cost, but it's a 5 defense, so this is pretty much going to make sure they stick around a bit with that big of a defense because of all the toxins that are in the air. Next up, we have Plague Forged Scrap. It enters, you activate the portal. Simple enough. During your primary phase, which is basically like your first part of the turn for the game, if the effect of a Pestilence Clash card you control defeats an opposing Clash card, you may send this card to Oblivion. If you do, draw 1 card. Because there's going to be ways that Pestilence will be able to take care of those pesky minions of war and all the other Clash cards. And when you do, you get the benefit from it from cards like Plague Forged Scrap. Next, we have Pestilence, the Virulent. It enters, put 1 toxic counter on target Clash card. When it's defeated, put a toxic counter on target Clash card. So, again, you're going to be messing with toxic counters. This one, make sure you keep them on cards you want to keep them on and just spread those poisons out a lot further. Next, we have the Defiler's Vial. When it enters, put a toxic counter on this card. Once per turn during your primary phase, you may engage this card. If you do, put a toxic counter on this card. Once per turn during your primary phase, you may engage this card and send it to the Oblivion. If you do, engage target Clash card with an initial resource cost less than or equal to the number of toxic counters on this card. So, you're building up the toxic counters, but your opponent has a big Clash contender or Clash card. You just use this vial, extend it, and go, hey, buddy, have a drink. And that'll take care of them without any problems. Next, we have I Am Decay. I love the artwork on this. So, if you control a Pestilence contender, this card costs 1 less green to play. Discard 2 cards and draw 2 cards. If the portal is open, distribute X toxic counters among any number of target Clash cards you don't control, where X is equal to number of cards you've discarded this way. Until end of turn, Harbinger Clash cards you control get +0/+1 for each toxic counter distributed this way. Whew, that's a lot. Pretty much, you're drawing cards. You're being able to cycle through your deck a little bit by drawing some extra cards, getting rid of some dead weight from your discard. And if the portal's open, you are going to be distributing a bunch of toxic counters. And while you do that, your character is going to be a lot tougher to deal with in the game. Next, we have Pestilence, Affliction Giver. When it's defeated, Clash cards you don't control get with toxic counters on them gets -1/-1 until end of turn. So this gets defeated. Good news, they got rid of Pestilence, the Affliction Giver. Bad news, a lot of them might be getting weaker depending on how much toxin counters you've been able to disperse throughout the game. Next, we have Noxious Alleyway, a Clash Ground. Counterattack, you may engage this card. If you do, move 1 toxic counter from a relic you control to target attacking Clash card. Clash cards get -1/-0 for each toxic counter on them. At the end of each player's turn, if they control a Clash card with 1 or more toxic counters, their contender loses 1 health. Love this card. So you're going to be weakening your opponent's cards, but at the same time, you're going to be weakening the contender as well, 1 hit point at a time. Alright, already done these. Next, we have Pestilence, Pandemic Warden. Whenever this card deals Clash damage to a contender, that contender's controller discards 1 card. If a Clash card is discarded this way, non-Harbinger Clash cards get -2/-2 until end of turn. Whew! Your opponent's characters are not going to be staying around long. Their Clash characters are going to be hurting with cards like this. Next, we have Defiling Interference. You may activate this trap when your opponent plays a Clash card. When that character enters play, or when that card enters play, it gets -X, -O until the end of the turn, where X is the card's initial resource cost. So if it's a big character, you're going to weaken it to the point to where they might go, I don't want to attack. Either way, this is definitely going to be a trap worth setting during the game. Next, we have Punishment. It's a counterplay. You may only play this card when an opponent plays a Clash buff on their turn. Target non-attacking Clash card gets -3/-3 until end of turn. Again, you're weakening your opponent's attackers. Nothing wrong about that. Infestation. You may only play this card if your contender is a Green Harbinger. I do believe the Pestilence makes that requirement. Target contender or Clash card you control gets +3/+0 until end of turn. Then target opponent discards one card. So, buff up your guy, weaken your opponent's hand. What's not to love about that card? Next, Pestilence Mayhem Maker. Enters the field, target contender or Clash card gets -1/-1 to end the turn. Then you draw a card. Simple enough. Weaken them, strengthen you. Makes perfect sense to me. Next up, we have the Tattered Shackle Blade. We've already discussed this in the other cards we looked at earlier, but this one has it to where if the attached contender cannot be the target of Clash buffs, so your opponent can't attack, do anything negative to your contender, which is good. Attached contender gets trigger attack. Draw one card. Then you may discard any number of cards. This card gets +1/+0 until end of turn for each card you discard this way. So, you might be weakening your hand, but you're strengthening your contender. Fair enough. This weapon is only to be attached to the Pestilence contender. Makes sense. Signature weapon. Not a problem with that at all. Next, we have Pestilence Plaguebringer. When it enters, target Clash card is -3/-3 until end of turn. When it's defeated, open the portal. You may put target Clash card with an initial resource cost of 1 or less from the Oblivion on top of your deck. So you're able to get some of the cards like Infestation back on top of your deck, but also when this enters the field, you're able to weaken something to get ready to hit with Pestilence Plaguebringer as soon as it hits play. Now, we do have one more card to go over, and this one's a big one because, well, yeah, it's big, and it's a lot of text, and I wanted to save it for last, and it also has great artwork, and I'm going to stop talking about it. Let's go with Pestilence, Harbinger of Desolation. It's an exclusive card. When it enters, you may put one toxic counter on this card. Then, for each permanent you control with a toxic counter, you may put one toxic counter on that permanent. And it has a Pestilence ability here. Clash cards you control with one or more toxic counters get trigger defeat. You may move any number of toxic counters from this card to target permanent. During your primary phase, if you remove 5 toxic counters from this card, if you do, target Clash card gets -5/-5 and loses all card effects and abilities until your next turn, until end of turn. This one is a heavy hitter. 5 for a 3/4 might seem a little bit steep, but with everything that has going on here, the ability definitely makes up for it. And if you can weaken your opponent's strongest Clash card with this ability, because you're giving so many different toxic counters on characters already on Clash cards, this is definitely going to be something that will help you swing the tide of battle in your favor. And again, just all the artwork on these cards in general, both the War deck and this one, love the artwork, and just the theme of these decks both are going to be really good to play against each other. But that is the War deck, that is the Pestilence deck, and I gotta say this right now, I'm looking forward to playing these against each other in the very near future, but I wanted to take a look at these decks right off the bat. But these were the decks for Genesis Return, the newest set for Alpha Clash. All right, there you have it. That is how to play Alpha Clash TCG. Give you a little bit of a primer, but also, more importantly, to take a look at the new decks for Genesis Returns in War versus Pestilence. Now, trading card games, especially newest ones that have been coming out over the past few years, they definitely take ideas from their predecessors and tweak them to the point to where you're getting a new aspect on it. So for Alpha Clash TCG, you have traps. They definitely work a lot different from Yu-Gi-Oh! Traps. You have the contenders work a bit different from your commanders in Magic the Gathering. And I really do like the spins that they have on these aspects of the games. And I can't wait to do a full playthrough on here later on down the line. Now, as far as War versus Pestilence, the decks themselves, they are extremely thematic. And as far as any type of starter deck goes for a game, I really enjoy how these two look because they honestly are these two characters. Because when you think War, a harbinger of destruction, like everything that's in that deck, you're amassing an army, you're a heavy hitter, you are trying to have your forces be insurmountable and take over your opponent. While Pestilence, on the other hand, focuses on toxic counters and spreading them around and basically being pestilence and weakening your opponent's hand, weakening your opponent's clash cards and contender while building up your contender and clash cards and having those toxins go your way beneficially. But I really do love how these decks look. I love the artwork, and I really cannot wait to see how these play against each other in a future video. But I want to thank Rising Empire Studios for sending me these decks to review for everybody because I've never really done anything with Alpha Clash yet, and hopefully I can do more with the game. I did have a video where I opened up the booster packs, and it's a little bit funny because I opened up those booster packs with little to no information about the game. I wanted to go into them fresh-eyed and like bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, if you will, and try to figure out the game just opening the packs and try to use my knowledge from previous games to see what I can comprise of what these cards can and can't do. So that's going to be in a separate video. It's already posted as well. I'll be posting at the same time this video comes out so you can see both the actual review of the decks, which you just saw, and the booster pack video and how I was a little bit naive, a bit fresh-eyed, looking at my first packs of Alpha Clash. And then once we go into it further, I'll be able to analyze those a bit more if I'm able to do more with Alpha Clash in the future. But thank you all so much for watching this video. If you like it, please like, share, comment, and subscribe, and let everyone know that House Hedge Gaming is here for all of your gaming needs. So until next time, everyone, stay safe and take care, my friends.